Welcome to the greatest podcast in sports betting entertainment. My name is Tanner Kern, certified G, bona fide stud, and you can't teach that. In this right here, this is G Money Grant Mitchell. We are here answering the questions, the final questions that you need to know before the College Football Playoff Quarterfinals, the real round of College Football Playoff games begin. Bada boom, man of the people in the room, G Money Grant Mitchell. How you doing?
I'm pumped up, Tanner. I'm pumped up because it is the first day of the quarterfinal of the first 12-team college football playoff. Also, as soon as we get done here, going to the barber, get myself trimmed up a little bit, got to get suited and booted going out later tonight. But I promise you, I said it on the last show, I made sure this place we're going to has TVs in the restaurant, and I will be locked into the game while I'm there.
It shouldn't be much of a game tonight. If this is a game, if we're sweating out a Penn State game against Boise State, there is a problem. We'll talk about these games in a minute, but just first thoughts before we promo WSN.com is that Penn State and Boise State is the matchups that we just saw in the first round again. So I don't think it's going to be a game, but I'll let you answer there before we talk about WSN, Grant.
My opening headline is Penn State responds to the call. They come out on Wednesday morning, the day after you're hearing this. There's going to be a lot of talk about this is the year for James Franklin. It might not be, but that will be the talk on Wednesday morning.
All right. Well, you've heard it here first. That's the talk. James Franklin National Championship. Anyways, WSN.com, Grant. Tell them why they need to check it out.
Absolutely. Well, first things first, honestly, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. We've been getting a lot of good reception on the last few episodes, so please keep yourself tuned in. But yeah, if you're into sports betting at all, you like betting on ping pong, you like the Super Bowl, you can be as risque or as off the path as you'd like, or you can just be mainstream. Doesn't matter. Go to WSN.com. Tanner, myself, a team of experts. We write previews of important games. We talk about betting trends. We give our best analysis, and we share our best bets for the week and the weekend. So if you're into sports betting at all, WSN.com, great place to be.
WSN.com. Make sure you guys check it out. Subscribe to Ride the Line so keep the show around. Like the show, subscribe to the show, comment on the show, take the show to the freaking moon, just like Penn State's taking Boise State to the moon tonight. Minus 11.5 point spread. The total is 53.5. Grant, going back to your comment about we're going to wake up on Wednesday and say, the media is going to be saying James Franklin is the guy that can lead Penn State to a national championship. This may be Penn State's year. I don't know if we're going to go that far with it just because he's got such a narrative around him about not winning big games, but this should not be a big game. And I saw a tweet online. I was telling you about this. Why is everyone so concerned about James Franklin beating Penn State? People saying James Franklin can't win a big game, not going to beat Boise State, I should say. But this is not really a big game. He is a master of beating teams that he should beat. He's a master of beating teams not named Ohio State and Michigan. So there's no reason James Franklin shouldn't come out and the Penn State Nittany Lions don't dominate this game tonight, especially in the trenches, where I think Boise State just can't match up with them. What do you think?
No, that's an excellent point. If we think about Penn State under James Franklin, they're always in or around that top 10. They creep up to like 3, 4, 5, and they hit their head on the ceiling, right? Boise State is not the ceiling. Boise State is if you ever walk into a split level home, you walk in, the first thing you do is the landing, and then you have to go straight upstairs or straight downstairs. In that scenario, Boise State is downstairs. Penn State is at least the landing. They're on the stairs going up there. Boise State is a team they should be beating. And I want to make it clear, I'm the quote unquote little guy defender on this show. I always stick up for the Boise States and the Cincinnatis, the TCUs, the Indianas. I have a lot of respect for these teams, and Boise State deserves to be here. They had an amazing season, only one loss on the road, 3 points at Oregon. I get all of it. It's a great year. Jeanty was the Heisman runner-up, and he could be the best player on the field in this game. But even with that being the case, Ashton Jeanty, you said this on the last show, Ashton Jeanty can run for 200 yards and 2 touchdowns, and Boise State could lose 35-14. That's just as simple as it is. When your win condition, meaning your path to victory, comes from running down the throat of a team that is going to have the advantage on the defensive line and that is going to be stronger and more physical than you, it's a losing equation. So, there's always going to be the chance of a backdoor cover here in a game that should be competitive because it is the playoff, but I don't think you're going to get that. I think this is a 15, 20, 25-point Penn State win?
I think it has to be. And honestly, when you look at SMU, I would say SMU had a more talented roster than Boise State. And I know that game was played in an ice box, but that team is probably more talented than the Boise State team showing up to play Penn State tonight. Ashton Jeanty's fantastic. He didn't have a great offensive line, though, this year. That's going to be exposed. Yes, he can break tackles, but Penn State's also an excellent tackling defense. We saw it last week. Drew Aller was terrible. Like, he didn't have to do anything offensively. Penn State didn't have to do a thing, and there was just no sweat of them ever losing that football game. They were always going to win it. I think if we get the offense that Penn State brought against Oregon in the Big Ten championship game, this game will be over by halftime because you're going to force Boise State to throw the ball. I just don't think they can do it. And Ashton Jeanty, while he is fantastic, I think there's only one player this season that's gone over 100 yards on Penn State on the ground. And if that is the case, it's going to be very tough for Ashton Jeanty to produce tonight.
Yeah, and I worry about Boise State's defense here. You know, when we think about Penn State in years past, we don't look at them as an explosive offense. And even now, Drew Aller, he's better than some of the quarterbacks they've had in recent years, sure. We don't put him up there with the Shadors and the Cam Wards and your Jackson Darts, even your Carson Becks. We don't put him in those tiers. But what you can say about Penn State is they were one of the most explosive teams in the country. They were the top 10 in yards per play, like it or not. Boise State's defense, 55th in yards per play allowed. And you always like to talk about that's the Mountain West. Now you're going against a Penn State team that's already seen Oregon, that scored 37 on Oregon, and that's already hosted Ohio State. Going to a neutral venue here against a Boise State team that has been off for a month, will be rested, but could also be a little bit rusty. It's not a good equation. Also, Tanner, some sharp money here actually on Penn State. 52% of bets on Boise, 58% of the money on Penn State.
Yeah, and no surprise there. And you're going to get a lot of people falling in love with the Boise State narrative. Boise State should not have had a bye. They're not as talented to beat Penn State. Not saying they can't beat them because anything can happen on any given day. But this is a game I think that Penn State has to win. James Franklin has to win because it's a game that they should win. Now, next round is going to be a little different. I would still take Penn State over Notre Dame. I don't know if I would take Penn State over Georgia because I do trust Drew Aller to throw the ball a little more than Riley Leonard if we get to that point. I think Penn State is just as physical up front. I think they have a pretty solid defense as well. So I would take them over Notre Dame, even though they'd be a slight dog. Georgia, we'll see how they look with their freshman quarterback. But Grant, we're ready to move on to Texas, Arizona State. We got a lot to talk about in this game.
Just putting a bow on this Boise State game, it's never a good thing. If Boise State goes behind and they have to throw the ball, that means their best player can't touch the ball. That's always going to be an issue. Yeah,
and they're going to be behind in this game. But Grant, did you focus on any of the media day conversations coming out of the Texas Arizona State media day?
I did not. Please enlighten me.
All right. So you got the quarterback, Sam Leavitt for Arizona State, saying he's going to go out there and prove he's the better quarterback in the matchup, which is very possible when Quinn Ewers is across from you. But honestly, Quinn Ewers gets a lot of flack. Quinn Ewers is a solid quarterback when he's playing up to his standard.
He's one of those guys. He's one of those guys who's a good college quarterback that you would have no faith in the NFL.
Yeah, like Quinn Ewers is good enough to go win national championship. So they asked Sam Leavitt, he's like, I'm here and I'm going to prove I'm the better quarterback. And then they asked Quinn, like, did you see the clip? He's like, yeah, I saw the clip. I'm just really excited to play a good football team in this bowl game, and really excited about the opportunity. Took it like a pro, took it like a champ. All right, so we see that. Then Cam Scatterbo comes out, or Scatterbo, whatever you say his name, and he goes, "There's nobody that can stop me. There's not one person that can stop me." So Texas doesn't need bulletin board material. They don't need an ounce of it for this game to beat your ass. And you've given them a lot of it. And then they asked the coach too, Dillingham, they were like, what are your thoughts on these comments? Or what are your thoughts on, kind of being cocky? And he's like, if the players need to be cocky to perform, that's fine. Like, that's how they do it. Like, you want to be humble, that's fine. You want to be cocky, that's fine. But like it depends how they get ready to go play a football game. But you just gave Quinn Ewers a little bulletin board material. You gave this entire defense bulletin board material because the first thing they're going to be saying when they shut down Scatterbo, which is their whole offense, is that nobody could stop you, right? So this is just a spot now where it's on a silver platter for Texas and Matthew McConaughey to whoop their ass.
I'm sorry. All I could think about when you're relaying that Cam Scatabo quote, all I could think about was the longest yard. That's how a white man runs the football.
I do like that.
Look, this is the thing. It's always cool to be a pro. Like the way Quinn Ewers handled that, pat on the back, round of applause. That's exactly what you're supposed to do. For someone or for a team in Arizona State's position, I almost don't hate that they're coming in with this approach. You are giving Texas bulletin board material, and it could backfire, right? But let's be honest here. You don't have the more experienced coach. You have the lesser players. You're coming from the lesser conference. Nobody believes in you. You have to create some fuel for yourself. So, if you have to walk around telling yourself like boxers do, if a boxer's got to walk around telling himself nobody in the world can knock me out before he gets in that ring, well, maybe that's what you got to do here if you're Arizona State. You got to pump yourself with that self-belief. Again, it could obviously go horribly wrong because if they go 3-and-out on the first two possessions, the game's probably already over at that point. And now you've got a Texas team that's confident, that's yelling at them, that's yelling at Sam Leavitt, you're the best quarterback, right? That's yelling at Cam Scatabo, oh, we can't stop you, right? Could go horribly wrong, but I don't hate the approach.
I don't hate the approach, but at the same time, too, there's probably a better route for this to backfire on them. Like looking at Texas is by far one of the most talented teams in the country. I'm not saying they can win a national championship, but up front, they are very good. Quinn Ewers is good enough when he shows up. They have a great run game. They can stop the run. So you're looking at this Arizona State team that's coming in here cocky. If I'm Arizona State, I'm more taking the approach, man, Texas is going to be really hard to beat. This is a great football team. We're going to have our hands full, blah, blah, blah. I'm taking that approach, and I'm hoping Texas overlooks us to play Oregon or Ohio State in the next round. That's what I'm hoping for more than, hey, Quinn Ewers, he's not as good as me, and Cam Scatabo. Like, the quarterback comment's one thing, because, like, honestly, you can be better than Quinn Ewers on any day. Cam Scatabo saying nobody can stop me, and now you're going up against the best run defense you've seen in your life. That's going to backfire in some regard. Cam Scatabo is not going to run for 200 yards on Texas. Not going to happen.
You know what? Cam Scatabo's path to this game is actually kind of wild. Like, think about it. This is a guy who was top 7 in Heisman voting, and he started at Sacramento State. That's kind of crazy.
Well, he's a white running back. Like, we gotta factor that in. He's a white running back. He's like a fullback at the next level.
He is, yeah. He's a little heavy. If he's going to go to the NFL, he's probably got to lose maybe like 10 pounds.
Yeah, I mean, Cam Scatabo, let's see.
I looked him up online, and I don't know if this is accurate, but I saw his 40 is a 4.6.
Seems probably right. I mean, I'm seeing 5'11", 215. Like that's a standard running back size.
I'm surprised he's not heavier than that. He looks big.
All right, so 170 against Iowa State, 177 against Arizona, 147 against BYU, 73 against Kansas State, 153 against Oklahoma State. So Kansas State shut him down. Let's see who else shut him down. Texas Tech shut him down. Texas State shut him down. That's early in the season. Wyoming shut him down. All right. So every other game he like popped off, but there were a lot like it was more. Ashton Jeanty was pretty solid the entire season. He was doing consistent numbers. Like Scatabo has been up and down a little bit when it comes to the yards here. Again, I'm going to take this approach as I did in the Penn State game. It's more likely that Scatabo is under 100 than over 100 in this game, especially if Texas gets a lead and the Arizona State's got to play from behind.
Yeah, I was just looking it up. Texas's run defense allowed 3.1 yards per carry. That was 8th in the country. So definitely going to be, probably the toughest test he's gotten his entire life.
I mean, looking at Texas too, and I know Texas did not play the toughest SEC schedule in the world. And Clemson was able to throw the ball in Texas. And I look at the Clemson game too, the points that they gave up. That game was never close. So did the team take the foot off the gas and coach a little differently? Yeah, I would say so. And then looking at Texas's just season overall, I mean, they abused everybody. Like Michigan's solid up front. Like they can run the ball. They can't throw. They have no threat throwing though, but they abused them early in the season. You abused Oklahoma. That's still Big 12 talent. I mean, SEC, Big 12, whatever. Georgia, you lost to. You abused Florida. Florida came along late. You made Texas A&M look like a JV team up front. Like, there's just a lot going for the Longhorns here. I don't think they needed the bulletin board material.
And, just like we were talking about with Ashton Jeanty, I think Arizona State has a little more balance. I think Maddox Madsen played well this season. Sam Levitt also played well, right? But if you get forced out of your run game and you're Arizona State, you're a huge underdog. This is a freshman quarterback. Freshmen just naturally are more prone to making mistakes and turning the ball over. We saw what Nico Iamaleava looks like against Ohio State. And is Ohio State? No. But is Texas's defense Ohio State's defense? Maybe, yeah. And, Texas might have the best defense in the country. So you're going to ask a freshman quarterback to play from behind against that. I just don't think that sets up very well.
Is he a true freshman?
I don't actually know. I just know that he's a freshman.
So redshirt freshman. So he's been on campus. We've seen what a redshirt freshman. This is a big game. This is the biggest game of his career. If you're a freshman, you don't need to be running your mouth to Quinn Ewers. I'm excited about the opportunity. Texas is a hell of a defense. It's going to be really hard for us to produce. We're going to try to run the ball. We're going to try to do this, that. Take the upper deck. You can see who's been there and who hasn't with how these teams answer media questions. And I like Oregon, Ohio State, the game we can move into next. Both those teams answer them like pros. Nobody is running their mouth. They're complimentary to the other team because you don't want to give anyone an ounce of bulletin board material, because that's just that thing, that extra ounce of motivation that takes you over the line and makes you a winner.
I also saw there were some big money bets coming in on Arizona State this weekend. Line went from 13.5 to 11.5. We're back to 12.5 at this point. So it's still holding steady. And I think you take the chalk here.
Arizona State could cover. If Arizona State covers, it could be a backdoor thing. I don't think Arizona State's going to be in a position to win the game, but they might be in a position to cover. I'm not going to say they aren't, but I could also see it's like a Clemson game. Like Clemson was in a position to cover the spread. It came down to the last drive, but it was never close.
Yeah, I think a situation like that is almost likely at this point. I'm with you. What was that? That game was 38-24, I think. I could see it going, very similar to that. I could see this being a 31-17, a 35-20, something like that. And like you said, Arizona State's driving to cover at the end of the game, but not really driving to win.
I can also see it being 28-10, 35.
I mean, if Arizona State turns the ball over early, like first, second possession, the game's over.
Keep in mind, Arizona State's trash on defense too. They are not good. Quinn Ewers should be able to pick them apart on defense.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's the Big 12. There's still not a lot of defense played there.
All right, Grant, Rose Bowl time. Number 8, Ohio State versus number 1, Oregon. This game has revealed why the seedings are so bad. Oregon's facing Ohio State, probably the two best teams left in the tournament, going at it in the quarterfinal, and they still got to win 2 more games. We've given our picks for this one. I'm on Oregon. You're on Ohio State. We both kind of don't trust Ryan Day. Oregon's still really young when it comes to Dan Lanning. There's a lot to talk about in this game, but has your opinion changed on Ohio State at all since our last podcast? Are you still on the Buckeyes fully here?
No, I'm still on the Buckeyes. The case that I made the last couple of shows was top to bottom, they've got the most talented team in the country. I think you agree with me on that. If we're going quarterback to safety, player 1 to player 53, you got to point to Ohio State. Where Oregon gets points is in situational preparedness, decision-making, and just general clutch factor. Not that we have seen Dan Lanning's teams show up clutch. They went undefeated this season. They didn't have clutch games necessarily. They had the close game with Ohio State, and they went ahead and they didn't let go against Penn State, but we haven't seen them in this moment, right? The closest thing we got last year was that Pac-12 championship game with Washington, and they lost. But we believe in Dan Lanning more than we believe in Ryan Day, mostly because we know what happens when Ryan Day gets to the number 1 team in the country. He always loses. So I'm still nervous. I said this on the last show. I'm still nervous because I trust Oregon more in a foxhole game. That's the terminology I used. And I trust Dan Lanning's preparedness more than I trust Ohio State's. But Ohio State also, I think, just has so much more talent. They have kind of the advantage because they've already played Oregon and lost. It was by 1 point on the road, so it wasn't a bad loss, but you're able to learn more from the tape in a loss than you would in a win. So I'm just hoping they're able to carry some of that momentum, some of that fire they came out with against Tennessee. I don't think they will look that good, but I do still have them winning this game.
I think so much more talent's a stretch. Like Oregon's a very good team. I think they're better in a lot of areas. Like, and you could say like, okay, Ohio State's defensive line's really good. Oregon State's defensive line's almost as good, right? It's probably not big enough to make a difference. Ohio State has a lot of dudes at receiver. Oregon's got a lot of speed at receiver that shredded Ohio State last time. I'd give the quarterback edge to Oregon 100%. Ohio State's beat up on their offensive line. That's going to be a concern. I know they look good against Tennessee, but can they bring the same energy against Oregon? I think talent-wise, yeah, Ohio State's there's more money that's gone into that roster. I think overall they are a better roster. But when it comes down to the play on the field, I think it's going to look relatively even here. For Oregon, biggest keys to the game, you got to convert in the red zone. You got to convert on fourth down. Like there were moments Oregon could have scored more points in the last game. There were moments Ohio State could have scored more points in the last game. I'm not buying into the old adage of it's tough to beat a team twice necessarily, because it was on October 12th, and that's a long time ago. And, that game could have gone either way. Both teams played well enough to win. Ohio State could have been in position to kick a game-winning field goal, but Ohio State's kicking game is also not very good. So they might have missed the field goal. You just never know what was going to happen there. But I think for this game, it's going to come down to preparedness. And my fear with Ohio State is if they smacked in the mouth early, and they're going to be able to respond, but this is not going to be like Tennessee. You're not going to be able to run your offense and run your defense like you did against Tennessee. So if you can't do that against Tennessee, are we going to see the Ohio State revert back to what happened when they had a little adversity against Michigan, or are we going to see them come out and keep playing well? I can't answer that, but I do trust Dan Lanning a little more than Ryan Day. So that would be my reason for taking Oregon here.
Yeah, one situation I'm watching for each team. For Oregon, you mentioned it, red zone offense. They really struggled earlier in the year. They got better as the year went on, but Ohio State allows the fewest points per game in the entire country. I believe that number is 11.3. So is Oregon going to be able to get to the red zone? And then can you score touchdowns once you're there? What's the easiest way to lose a game? Kick field goals in the red zone. So if you're Oregon, you got to punch it in. For Ohio State, can they generate a pass rush? That was something that they've failed to do in big games over recent years. I believe they got 0 sacks when they played Oregon earlier this year. They changed things up. They started bringing a lot more pressure, a lot of 5-6 man blitzes, bringing pressure from different looks, different angles. So can they force Dillon Gabriel, who we both agree Dillon Gabriel is the best quarterback in the college football playoff, but we also don't look at him as a great quarterback. So if you're able to get him on the ground early, get him a little bit flustered, can that change the trajectory of the game?
It probably can, but Ohio State wasn't able to do that, and their pass rush is very inconsistent. So it just comes down to which team's going to show up. I think either team could show up in this game, and it's going to be close. It's going to be a tight game. That's what everyone's saying. You're hard pressed to find a podcast, a article, a show that says this is not more than a field goal to touchdown game either side. Nobody's saying Oregon by 10. No one's saying Ohio State by 10 or 14. It's like this game's going to come down to a field goal. It could come down to whoever has the ball last, sort of thing. The one reason that I have probably the most confidence in Oregon here is the fact that they are the only undefeated team in the country. They are the underdog here, and you're finding a lot more people picking Ohio State than you are Oregon in this game. And I think that can play into Dan Lanning's approach and how they go about their business this week.
I would guess, I'm not saying Oregon's a small fan base, but I would just guess that's the size and popularity of Ohio State. It's kind of like the Cowboys in the NFL, right?
Yeah, but also you go on ESPN and everyone's picking Dan Orlovsky's top 5 list, by the way. Did you see that?
No,
His top 5 national contender. Georgia was not on there. He did not have Georgia as a top 5 national championship contender. He had Ohio State above Oregon, but he did not have Georgia on there. I was like, that's crazy.
I mean, do we want to transition over to that game?
Yeah, there's nothing. I think for Ohio State, Oregon, it's not much to talk about here. We've kind of talked about everything there is. It's going to be tight. Both teams are really good, and it comes down to who shows up and who has the ball last, potentially. That's the biggest thing. Now, Notre Dame, Georgia, though, I get why people are picking Notre Dame, but I also don't get why people are picking Notre Dame.
Okay, so let me start this off, and then you can kind of go back at it, because I want to start this by saying I have Georgia, but I'm feeling worse and worse and worse about it. Let's just review the tape here. Georgia's playing a sophomore backup quarterback with essentially no experience. Their running game was 15th of 16 SEC schools, and their receivers led P4 conferences in drops. So I get it. Like Notre Dame is top 2 or top 3 in points per game allowed and yards per play allowed. How's Georgia going to move the ball? If somebody comes to you and says that, I don't know what you say back to it. Now, Georgia's defense showed up when it needed to in the biggest games. It's 2 biggest games of the year on the road at Texas, SEC championship game against Texas. The defense balled out. So can they shut down a somewhat limited Notre Dame offense? It's definitely possible, but are they going to be able to score 17 points? I don't know that they are, and that's what concerns me.
All right, so when it comes down to throwing the ball, of course they're going to throw the ball at Carson Beck. Carson Beck was expected to be the Heisman winner. He was expected to be the first pick in the draft going into the season. Obviously, it didn't shape out that way. But Carson Beck, the hype was there with Carson Beck. You look at what happened when they entered the Texas game. They held Texas to 51 yards on the ground with their starting running back. Trevor Etienne came into that game 16, 94, and 2 touchdowns. When have we seen that from him this season? That has not been the standard. Not that he's played in every game, right? He had the problems early in the season. But, going to his 5 performances prior to this, 35 yards against Mississippi State, 87 against Texas first time, 31 against Florida, 24 against Ole Miss. It was only getting 6-7 carries, 11 carries against Mississippi State. But then against Texas in the SEC championship, when they needed to run the ball, 16, 94, 2 touchdowns. I don't think Georgia's leaned on the run game as much because they haven't had to lean on the run game with Carson Beck. Defensively, they're solid. I don't think Riley Leonard is going to be able to throw the ball. A one-dimensional quarterback is going to have a tough time moving the ball on Georgia's defense. If Riley Leonard can, make Georgia honor the pass a little bit, different story. I don't see that happening. And then when you look at Gunnar Stockton, you don't get the downfield passing, probably. Like, we haven't seen him throw the ball enough, but there were some shaky throws in the SEC championship, but the composure was there at least. And he can also run the ball. So now we add that element in. And Notre Dame does not know what you're getting out of him either. They're watching his freaking high school tape to try to get, a stance on what he's going to do in this game too. So it's a really hard situation, I think, for Notre Dame because you don't have a quarterback who can throw. Now you're facing an SEC team. You haven't faced anybody this year. Let's be real about Notre Dame. Yes, they are very good. They match up statistically very well, but they have not faced anyone. They haven't played from behind. That's a testament to how good they are, but it's also a situation where Georgia's really comfortable playing from behind. They've done it all year. They've come back at the half. Notre Dame goes down at the half. What are we going to get out of them if they have to throw? I don't think they're going to be in that situation as much. I think it's going to be a ground and pound kind of game. But Georgia can run the ball if they want to run the ball. I truly believe that. If they commit to it. They just haven't committed to it this year.
I think you make a lot of good points. I've said this last couple of shows. I'm sure you're tired of hearing me say this. If I'm Notre Dame, Marcus Freeman, I'm watching what Georgia Tech did. I'm trying to get the offense to emulate some of what Haynes King did. Georgia Tech didn't win that game, but they brought it to 8 overtimes. We both agree Haynes King is a better player than Riley Leonard. He can probably throw the deep ball a little better, and he's more agile, more nimble, better at evading tackles. But that's the style of offense Riley Leonard wants to run. Wants a lot of quick stuff, short intermediate game, quarterback runs, screens, give the ball to your running back. That is the style that has given Georgia problems. I like all of what you said there. I really do. And again, I'm taking Georgia, so it makes me feel better. The biggest thing I would say, the reason you should lean Georgia is Kirby Smart. It's kind of like what we're seeing with the Kansas City Chiefs in the NFL. The Chiefs have not been explosive. They've not been dominant. They've not been all these things. You can say they get away with field goals and luck, and there's all these one-score games. They always win because they're more comfortable playing within the margins than anybody else. That is Georgia. To your point, they've come from behind numerous times. They almost had the 28-point comeback against Alabama. 8 overtimes, trailing at the SEC championship game. Backup quarterback. This team, going back to kind of what we were talking about with Oregon and Dan Lanning, their preparedness for games and situations exceeds any other team in the country. And where I think you do get the biggest difference there, like you said, Notre Dame, great season, have not played anybody of this caliber, anybody of this physicality. And even if they had, it would be a one-off. Georgia goes through this every week in the SEC. So I like them. I don't love them, but I think you still got to trust them here.
I like them, don't love them. I think that's a really good take. If Carson Beck's playing in this game, I love them, but Carson Beck hasn't been great this year either. Carson Beck's turned the ball over, he hasn't been consistent. Now the yards have been there, but still, like, you saw something when Stockton came into the game for Georgia, they all elevated their play, and this is a game where they're going to have to elevate their play to beat Notre Dame. But looking at Riley Leonard's stats in his past 5 games. 6.3 yards per attempt, 7 per year per completion, 7 yards per completion, 6.5 yards per completion, had 11.4 against Army, whoop-de-doo, 8 yards per completion against FSU. They're not explosive either. And I think Riley Leonard going against Kirby Smart in a really good defense, that the program has just, like, Georgia's all about the program. Like, they're the best team in this tournament, I would say, as far as just buying into the team mentality and Kirby Smart and all that. I think that's going to show in this game. I really do. And I think the physicality, we've seen this. Notre Dame takes on the SEC. It does not always go well for Notre Dame. More times than not, it's going to go well for the SEC program. Gunnar Stockton aside, he's got to be clean. He can't turn the ball over. He's got to run the offense well. But if you put this game on your defense and you get ETN going a little bit and you can hit some plays with Stockton a few down the field, I think you're in really good shape.
I agree with you. So just to recap here, we almost have a clean sweep of the same picks. We both got Penn State spread. We both got Texas spread. We're both on Georgia here. Take the money line. There's no point in going 1.5. Just take a money line. Do yourself the favor. The only place we disagree, you've got Oregon. I've got Ohio State.
Yeah, and honestly, like, if Ohio State beats Oregon, I'm not going to be surprised. I think for you, if Oregon beats Ohio State, you're not going to be surprised. I would be more surprised if Notre Dame beats Georgia.
You're saying you'd be then if Ohio State beat Oregon?
Yeah, anything can happen in that Ohio State-Oregon game, but I think there's more route to victory for Georgia over Notre Dame than there is for Ohio State or Oregon over their opponent.
Yeah, I would be surprised, but Notre Dame is alive in this game. Like, don't get it wrong.
No, Notre Dame is alive in this game. I totally agree with that, but I just trust Georgia a lot more than I do Notre Dame, and I think if we get Penn State Notre Dame, I think Penn State not smokes Notre Dame, but Penn State could be more dangerous than Georgia right now.
So there's an interesting question to answer here, and we can wrap the show up with this, and it involves both of those teams. But if we're looking at coaches who have the most to gain here, I think you could make a case for James Franklin, Marcus Freeman, Sark, and Ryan Day.
To win? Like,
yeah, if they win the national championship, like, which one of them gains the most from that? I think it could be any of those 4, depending on how you want to argue it.
I think Sark is kind of the best, like, big coach game that doesn't show up. Like Sark doesn't have the reputation of Ryan Day because he hasn't been around enough to have that reputation. Like, obviously lost a game, last year that Texas could have won easily in the college football playoff, but like, Sark hasn't been around enough big games to be like, okay, Sark can't win a big game. Ryan Day can't win a big game. Marcus Freeman's still elevating himself, but like Notre Dame, I don't look at Riley Leonard like a championship quarterback. Who's the last kid with the good hair from Wake Forest?
Oh, your guy, Sam Hartman.
I love Sam Hartman. Like, that dude could throw the football. So Sam Hartman, I think, gave them a much better chance to win than Riley Leonard. I think Notre Dame is a victim of an easy schedule if they play from behind. We need to see what it looks like playing from behind. I don't think it's going to be pretty.
No, I'm with you. We've talked about this already. We talked about this with Boise. We talked about it with Arizona State. If you are a running team going against a good defense and you fall behind, it becomes close to impossible to win. Now, maybe it's a little different just in this case because Georgia does have the backup quarterback, but if they were going against any other team, you would say they have no shot if they fall behind. No shot.
And again, like, Notre Dame can fall from behind by 10 points and probably win the game, maybe 14 even. Like, if Arizona State goes down 14 or Boise State goes down 14, I would say those games are 99.9% over.
You said that you were worried about the the health and safety of the SMU players against Penn State before they. Are you worried about the health and safety of Boise State tonight?
Yeah, I kind of am. Like SMU, the only difference is this is a warm weather game. Like SMU, that's the biggest thing. When they were doing college game day, and what's his name for SMU, the kid, the turnover machine, the quarterback,
Jennings.
Yeah, Kevin Jennings, like, or he's just sitting there, like, yeah, this isn't going to be a tough game. Like Penn State's defense, they're good, they're really good. It's a little cold. Like he was just very nonchalant about it. Like you didn't know what you were getting, and you watch film. When Penn State's playing Ohio State on film, obviously Penn State doesn't look as good because they're going against an immovable object themselves. If you put Penn State against SMU film on, or the comparative team to that, and you're watching that film, you're going to be like, damn, yeah, these guys are really good. So I am kind of concerned for the health and safety of Boise State. It's more likely in the Texas and the Boise State games that we get last weekend's results rather than close games. I don't think this tournament comes down to upsets. Like the upsets are not a thing in college football that much because talent wins. I don't think they're ever going to be a thing in this tournament.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you pretty much on that. If you're going to get an upset, I mean, looking at it, 8-1 would be an upset, but like we think Oregon and Ohio State are the two best teams anyway. So
it's just because of incompetence of the committee making the brackets. Grant, one thing we can wrap with before if I can find it, I don't know if you saw how the bracket would look if it was just ranked off like what it should have been ranked off. I don't know if I can find it here, but there was a bracket somebody did that took away the automatic buys, basically gave them to the teams that actually deserve the buys. And I don't know if I can find it, but basically it was so much better. It was really good.
Was it the same 12 teams?
It was the same 12 teams. Let me try to pull it up for the people because the people want to see it. If I can do it within a minute. College football playoff bracket. It was like a reseeding without the automatic buys. Okay, here. No, I can't. I don't think I can find it. But basically, it had like Indiana playing Boise State in the first round. And then that winner was going to face Oregon. And then Oregon was going to face like Penn State. And then on the flip side of the bracket, you were going to get, it was going to match up for like potentially Oregon, Georgia, Oregon, Ohio State. But Ohio State and Georgia were on the same side of the bracket. And Oregon had a much cleaner path to the final, as they should as the 1 seed.
I got to tell you, I haven't heard a better proposal than what I said, which is 4 guaranteed buy. Well, I said the conference champions guaranteed a spot, not guaranteed a buy. The top 4, the teams with the buy are the highest ranking teams. And then after the first round, those 4 get to pick who they want, like in a draft. I think that would be so cool.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that would be cool.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, you just make it like a television event out of it. Like how the NBA, when the NBA was trying with experimenting where the captains could draft their teams. If Oregon's the number 1 seed, Dan Lanning gets in front of a camera and says, well, if we look at the first round, Ohio State, let's say Ohio State won, Penn State won, Notre Dame won, and Tennessee won. I know they didn't, but let's just say they did. We are going to select Tennessee as our opponent. And then you go to the 2 seed, Georgia. Georgia's like, we want to play Penn State. I just make a television event out of it. It would be great all around. It creates storylines. It keeps the competition. It gives you more viewership, more ratings. I think it would be awesome.
I think the only problem with that, and this isn't really a problem, but when you're preparing for these games, like who's going to come and the fan base and the marketing side and the TV and all, like it's hard to not know, well, this week the Rose Bowl is going to be between Oregon and then the winner of Ohio State. Like it's such a quick turnaround time for the marketing side and the ticket sales and all that, which is the one reason I don't know if they would do that, but I like the idea.
No, you're definitely right on that. I hadn't considered that. That would be the pushback on it.
But it's cool. I like it. I'm here for it. Anyways, Grant, that's another day of picks. We'll be back on Thursday. We'll recap all the games. Friday. We'll recap all the games, look ahead to the semifinals. Still got a long way to go in the tournament. So take us out of here, Grant.
Guys, before you click off here, make sure you do Tanner myself the favor. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button as well. Jump in the comment section as well. I mean, we've loved the turnout on the last few episodes, so please share your thoughts, whether you agree with us, whether you disagree with us. Go down there. We will be reviewing them, might even talk about them on the next show. Have a great new year, everybody. Tanner and I will catch you all on the next episode of Ride the Line.